Okay, today we're going to recount a story that's, well, it's truly disturbing. A really tragic case from the U.S. We're talking about Lacey Fletcher.
Yes, and we'll be outlining the events as they unfolded, looking at the heartbreaking reality that was discovered.
So the key people here are Lacey herself and her parents, Clay and Sheila Fletcher. They lived in a small town, Slaughter, Louisiana.
Which feels almost, grimly ironic looking back.
Definitely.
And the police, when they first arrived, it was just a scene of absolute horror. They were called to the house by the Fletchers, actually.
Right, and they found Lacey deceased on a sofa. But the state she was in, it's hard to even describe. Severe neglect, extreme decomposition.
It looked like her body had almost melted into or fused with the sofa itself. That's how bad it was.
And the first responders, the police, they reported this overwhelming putrid smell the second they walked in.
Yeah, it just paints such a grim picture of what she must have endured right there in that house.
The story that emerged was that Lacey had allegedly been left on that specific sofa by her parents for something like 12 years.
12 years. And that this neglect directly led to her death. It's why the case became so widely known, sparking outrage,
Absolutely. And it just raises so many questions about what was happening behind closed doors. So to recap the scene they found, Lacey Fletcher fused to this sofa, covered in her own bodily waste.
The details are gruesome. Reports mention severe bed sores, ulcers that went right down to the bone.
And even signs of insect activity, maggots. It's almost impossible to imagine that level of suffering.
And initially the parents, Clay and Sheila, they told the authorities they had been caring for Lacey.
Right, they mentioned her conditions, autism and severe social anxiety.
That was their explanation for why she stayed home, why she was apparently confined to that sofa.
But then the investigation started to uncover things that just didn't line up with that story.
Exactly. Like the autopsy findings.
Yes, that was crucial. The autopsy found foam, like from the sofa stuffing, and fecal matter inside Lacey's stomach.
Which directly contradicted the parents' claim that they'd fed her just shortly before she passed away. I think they mentioned sandwiches.
It completely undermined their narrative of providing care, didn't it? That one piece of evidence.
Absolutely. The forensic evidence started painting a very, very different picture of what actually happened.
And that led to the initial charges.
Second-degree murder initially. They pleaded not guilty at that point.
And they were released on a pretty substantial bond, I recall.
They were. But the legal process continued, and eventually there was a resolution.
They ultimately pleaded no contest to manslaughter. Not murder, but manslaughter.
Which, for anyone listening who isn't familiar, a no contest plea means they aren't admitting guilt exactly, but they aren't fighting the charge either. They accept the conviction.
And the sentence.
40 years in prison for both Clay and Sheila Fletcher, with the possibility of parole, I believe, after serving 20 years.
40 years. It's significant.
It is. And yet, it still leaves you with this really haunting question, doesn't it?
What was the real motivation? Why did this happen?
Exactly. They maintained they were acting in what they thought was Lacey's best interest because of her autism, her anxiety. To protect her, perhaps.
But how do you square that claim with the sheer horror of her condition? The suffering she endured for over a decade.
You can't really. The disconnect is just staggering. Their version of care versus the awful reality found in that room.
It makes you think about, basic human decency. Responsibility. How could anyone let another human being exist like that? Especially their own child.
Precisely. This whole case, it's such a stark, tragic reminder of fundamental needs. The need for care, for health, for basic dignity.
Needs that were just catastrophically failed in Lacey's case. Regardless of her challenges, the neglect was absolute.
A complete failure by the very people supposed to protect her.
A truly devastating story. It certainly makes you think about what can go on unseen and the importance of, just being aware.
Indeed.
That's the story we wanted to recount today. Thank you for joining us to listen. If this story resonated with you or made you think, please do consider liking this, sharing it, and subscribing to our channel, Horror Docs. We appreciate your support.